Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I'm Alejandro, one of your co-hosts, and with me is my lovely non-shirt, cool shirt wearing.
Paul, nice to see you.
Hi, yeah, no cool game shirt this time, Paul.
Not this time. I went and picked up a nice plain shirt that fits me a little better, and I decided to wear it today.
Makes sense. I wish I had some cool gaming shirts. I actually went to pass through a store in one of our malls that had a bunch of like Mario, Sonic, like all gaming related shirts. I was like, should I get one of those? Maybe someday. Paul, have you been?
I've been all right. It's been an interesting week for gaming. That's absolutely for sure. So I've been riding the highs and lows of this roller coaster that we call social media.
Yeah.
Um, Alejandro, how have you been? You been doing anything different?
Um, same old, same old. Going on walks and all. I actually this time we're recording way earlier than I did last week, so
Yes.
I might go on my walk after this. So then, other than that, just kicking around, playing some games, reading the news.
Yeah.
So, so
But
before,
before the
yeah,
news,
before the news, Paul, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a couple of things actually. So I got my Switch fixed first of all, so I did get to play some Skyward Sword. My thoughts on it, I think you and I have already talked about it somewhat, but I think that it's like a two steps forward, one step back situation. It's a huge
Mm-hmm.
improvement, but I can also see a lot of cracks where they could have added some quality of life in the way of the infamous camera system, like what you and I talked about. Just flip flopping the ability to move the right stick like every other game at this point, rather
Mm-hmm.
than holding the left trigger and or shoulder button and then using the right stick. Besides that, I'm loving it. It was still one of my favorite stories of the Legend of Zelda franchise for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I love the characters and I love the art style for sure. So it also made me very happy that I have an easily accessible mode of having family experience that in the future, whether it be my wife or whoever future kids come along one day. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. The next thing I played was an indie game called Bomber Crew, just like it's imagine like a cutaway of a World War II bomber, and you have to manage all of your crew within it to like, oh, there's a fire on the engine, you got to tell somebody to go outside of it. You got to refill the guns. You just got to make sure everything's working in tandem, and it is brutal to manage. It is so hard. So I might have actually burnt out myself on that one, but it was like $1 on sale, so I picked it up. And then lastly, I went back to the Battlefield franchise.
Nice. Which
Um,
one?
4 and 5 actually. So
Okay.
I played 4 first, re-downloaded that because it has a server browser, so people are actually able to find games in that one still.
Mm-hmm.
And it's surprisingly, I wouldn't say packed, but you can find full games of Conquest and Rush, which is like really all anyone cares about anyway. And that was a lot of fun. I can see how they've added quality of life after that point, but just the ability to have all of those attachments, the sheer vastness of weaponry that and options that give you are unparalleled. So I'm glad that they're going back to like the pseudo modern day, also slightly futuristic. And then for 5, some of my friends were playing it, and we all had a good rip roaring time of absolute chaos on Conquest. And
Mm-hmm.
it's still got a lot of problems, but I'm glad that I'm coming back to it on a positive note because overall, it's just getting me excited for the next one coming in October.
Yeah,
So that's it for
2042.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, I kept playing Skyward Sword also. I finally reached the point where you start backtracking to the old areas after going through the three things. So now, slowly, I'm remembering why it's my least favorite. So I kind of like put it down to play the other ones because I remember I told you that I was kind of playing through the old ones also because I was on a
Yeah.
Zelda kick. In that time, like when I put Skyward Sword down, just as I mentalized myself that I have to go back to the old areas again, and I know the swimming part is coming, and I'm dreading it. I replayed Ocarina of Time and finished Ocarina of Time, and I finally like scratched my itch and touched Wind Waker again, the GameCube version, and I stopped by the time that you reached Dragon Roost Island because I just kind of wanted to, because I've been wanting to like re-experience Wind Waker, but Wind Waker is also the interesting one that I know that there's a very grindy part that's very far up that I don't want to kind
Yeah.
of get down the rabbit hole of that Triforce quest, but I kind of wanted to satiate my desire to play Wind Waker because I'm still
Yeah.
holding on the hope that we're gonna get the updated version that people got in the Wii U on Switch. So I was
True.
like, if I'm gonna replay it, I want to replay it in the in its
Original state.
or no, not original state because that would be GameCube. I want to play it in its updated, streamlined, better quality
Oh,
of
okay. I see
life
what you mean.
style game because
Hmm.
it deserves it. Because my nostalgia, like I always say that Wind Waker is my favorite, but I realize I've only beaten it once compared to other Zeldas because of
Yeah.
that Triforce quest. But its highs are so imprinted in my mind. It's music, just the music. When
Hmm.
you're like when you start riding the boat, it's like
Mm.
it has this whimsical sense of adventure and joy when it goes like that soundtrack's so memorable and the visuals even on GameCube like with my Wii plugged in with component cables, the green blue red cables that I don't know if you remember those
Oh yeah.
that predated HDMI. It somehow holds up even though there's an HD version that looks better. Like the GameCube version actually holds up so well. So I scratched that itch, and then I also moved into Twilight Princess on Wii, another game that got its HD remaster on the Wii U. And I came in with the hot take yesterday that I think Twilight Princess is pound for pound the best Zelda game in that style. Like in the classic, the style that was birthed in Ocarina of Time
Hmm.
onwards, like and that ended with Skyward Sword. And kind of like what I realized is that, especially because I remember back in the day when our friend PJ let me borrow his Wii U when we were back in college, and I actually replayed Twilight Princess HD there. And it's a game that required such little improvements because it didn't really need it. It
Yeah.
didn't have grindy steps. It didn't have bad controls, aka like Skyward Sword, that needed to be retouched. Like it made me realize that in what that game lacks in like in the whimsical or in something that imprints itself in your brain, like an amazing story like Skyward Sword, the what you call it, the incredible world of exploration. Did something fall there? Your
No,
face?
it's just like for whatever reason, it's picking up something right here, but there's
Uh
nothing there. So I
okay,
don't know
yeah,
why.
yeah. So, or like when you go to Breath of the Wild, that it's defined by its amazing sandbox and its open world and its in its sense of discovery, or Wind Waker's art style and its music and all that. All
Yeah.
those three games, they have those amazing touchstones, but then you can counter them with like, man, the weapon durability on Breath of the Wild, or man, the dungeons suck in this game. If they're not shrines, the shrines are good. Man, the story's like it's barely even here. You have to kind of find it. It's or then you go to Skyward Sword. Yeah, this has an amazing story. The characterization of Zelda and Link is so good. Gruz is amazing. Ah, the effing dowsing. My god, the backtracking. God damn it, these controllers. Ah, this combat. Like, why do they keep blocking me? And like, or Wind Waker. God damn it, the Triforce quest. Like, he has all those things. And then when I think about Twilight Princess, I'm like, what does it have that it's bad? And the only thing that I can really think of is that the art style this day and age is like may look a little too tad generic because it's aping more dark fantasy.
It's
Like
very
it,
washed out.
yeah, it's very washed out, and its soundtrack. I will say, like it's probably the only game that doesn't have a song that's hummable like the other ones. Like I can think
That's true.
of Wind Waker, and I can say, dun, 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 dun,
I
dun, dun.
can think of
Yeah,
one of the Wolf songs that they
yeah.
had. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. But
Ooh.
where did it come from?
Yeah,
Ocarina of Time and
I know.
Ocarina of Time. Like that soundtrack is so memorable. Like you can
Hmm.
immediately remember walking through Hyrule Field. You can immediately remember the Kakariko Village song. You can the Zelda lullaby, like all of that. And Twilight Princess doesn't have that. But when it comes to gameplay design, other than unless you absolutely hate, and I mean hate motion controls because of the Wii version, where to combat you have to like do this. I literally
Hmm.
the combat I don't barely do this. I just shake it. and it works. And to me,
Really?
yeah, and it works. Instead of having to be intentional about where you move it, in concept, it's cool that Skyward Sword actually made back then a system that required you to actually mimic the movement.
Which I
I'm
would
a
say still worked better than any Kinect or PlayStation Move
oh
that
oh yes,
they had
exactly.
going on.
And I'm a lazy ass gamer. That's my problem. That I'm like, I want as less friction as possible. Somehow, I think like because I'm playing the Wii version, I wish I'd still had my GameCube version. I kind of gave it away because back in the day, I was like, I have the Wii version. That's supposedly the better version. You have the GameCube version. And then looking back, I'm like, I was a fool. I should have kept the GameCube version because it's just so traditional. But in motion controls, I just prefer Twilight Princess over the motion controls of Skyward Sword because they get too overbearing. Oh, how to throw a bomb? Pike, you have to hold the controller up and then put it there. Or if you want to
Yeah.
roll it, you have to like put it down and move
Hmm.
it. And oh, the bug, one of the items that you get,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
have to like control it like this, and then of course the okay, it's time to calibrate the controller. You have to hold the Wiimote. You have to hold it like straight for it to be recalibrated on top of the button that lets you recalibrate to the center. It's for all like that the technology that they added to make the concept of moving your soul cooler. It just made, especially for the lazy gamers like I am, that I just want to have fun and think about it less. It's somehow the Twilight Princess shakiness of it works better for me. And the I feel it's also the best paced Zelda game when it comes to the forward momentum that you get in that game, because there's so little backtracking, and the minimal backtracking there is so meaningful. Like early on, like you go to Kakariko Village and then you have to climb to the Gorons, and then the Gorms kind of push you out, and then you have to kind of find the iron boots that you're given back in Orton Village. So it's like, okay, you have to like go back. It's before you even think, oh, this is gonna be a long trek back home. You get Epona just like that, and then you reach Orton Village like in 1 minute, 2 minute stops maybe. And there's just a lot of forward momentum, and even things that, because I know so many people are like, "What do you complain about dowsing in Skyward Sword?" There's the quest where you have to play as Wolf Link and find the things of light. It only happens 3 times. The things of light,
That is true.
the insects of light that you have, and they're all marked in the map. You don't have to be being in first person, moving your controller like an idiot, waiting for a circle to keep getting bigger, and not knowing if you're in the right area and having to like find ways to go around. Like, and it doesn't happen the entire game.
Hmm.
So it's like it's so frictionless, and its dungeon design is so amazing. Like just I love the forest temple of that game, especially how it dovetails with you saving monkeys. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. Like it's uh, Twilight Princess is like so it was billed as the darkest of the Zelda games, but it has so much funny stuff in it.
It has
Like
some really wacky things from the
yeah,
clowns, the
uh-huh.
weird,
Yeah, the
like the
clown that
sky creatures,
yeah,
the
the clown
baby
with
that runs a store.
mhm.
It's all weird.
Telma, the lady that and takes care of Ilya, kind of like the sort of love interest that loses her memory in Twilight
Yeah.
Princess. Like, yeah, it has enough whimsical in it, and to me, like, I have the thing that I think Ocarina of Time is darker because its art style is so unsettling. It's like it's
Hmm.
so creepy. So I
I
just
think that's retroactively
yeah
because of the datedness of it, but we talked about that once. Like the
yeah.
low polygons will make something even more terrifying.
Yeah, I feel like the way the art was just made in that game just makes it absolutely creepy, even till this day. Like I played Ocarina of Time and trying to go through the Shadow Temple of that game still give me the creeps. The zombies in Ocarina of Time, when they look at
Hmm.
you and they scream and you freeze in place, like that game still remains creepy to its credit, as dated as it is. And I don't think Twilight Princess has that creepiness factor to it, but it has a really great creepy atmosphere,
Yeah.
and it's
No.
very Tron-like soundtrack when the shadow beasts come in and all of that. So I
There's
know that.
one spot that kind of battles that with the Egyptian area with the Redeads
Hmm.
will somewhat have something like that because you can't. I don't think you can kill them either. You just have to get away. But Yeah, I remember watching one of my friends play through that portion of Ocarina of Time, and I think it was pretty early on still.
Mhm.
And those things are horrifying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's crazy that Zelda was allowed to go that creepy that early, like in the late '90s, and I think that's what made it such a beloved series. It's like because also Metroid, you can also consider it's also sort of proto horror, but it's more like in the alien style
Right.
of horror. This one's like in the more fantasy style of horror. So yeah, I think I might like like I played Twilight Princess for like 12 hours now, like because you can see the count, and I just got to the water temple there, so I still have many things. That it's a lengthy adventure,
Yeah.
but because it's so expansive in its scope. Like I just love the former Memento. I just kind of want to keep going, and I haven't played Twilight Princess now since the HD version in 2017, and I wouldn't mind playing it again if the reports get confirmed that it also comes to Switch because I think that'd be a great one to have in the go for people that want it in the go,
Yeah.
and just play it a little with as little friction as possible. So that's what I was playing, and also I kept playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm still playing
Mm,
through the DLC of that game, and the first three packs are fine. It's like the legacy of the first blade, kind of like hearing about Darius, who ended up being like the first assassin that had the hidden blade, and I was about the DLC until the very end, where it really ties itself to Assassin's Creed Origins in a really cool way. And I was like, huh, okay, this explains some stuff. Kind of like it gave me chills. Just like when you see when things kind of connect in a way, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool.
yeah.
Um, and then, but the second set of DLC, the Fate of Atlantis, Paul, if you've ever cared in Assassin's Creed about the first civilization and or more of that kind of like that meta narrative, Fate of Atlantis is insane. It's like it's centered on them, and just the biomes that you're literally playing the underworld, like like in the underworld of Greece,
Yeah.
like you go through Elysium in the first DLC pack where you find like the wife of Hades, Persephone, and other gods like Hermes and Hecate and Adonis, and how they kind of recontextualize Greek mythology as like these were the first civilization. These were like aliens, and how like everything's contextualized and the biome that you explore, it's incredible. Like the actual world that you go around and climb and check all the question marks and all that. It was mesmerizing.
Hmm.
Like it's just in fact, it makes sense why the next game of these guys was Immortals, because the Immortals world is very like whimsy, like it has a whimsical to it that is so pretty, that is so evocative, that it feels like their imagination went wild. And you don't only explore Elysium. That's in the first DLC pack. Then in the second one, that's where I stopped. You actually go to the Hades underworld. So you're in hell. You interact with Hades. When you're like talking with Hades after beating Cerberus, the three-headed dog, which you shouldn't be surprised you find the Medusa, the Minotaur, the Cyclops, the Sphinx in the main campaign. It's like the Assassin's Creed series has jumped the shark so immensely these days that I'm all for it. That's the thing. Like, if I had told my 2007 self that played through that original Assassin's Creed game in Jerusalem that series was destined to eventually lead to talk with Hades, like it's nuts. And from what I understand, because I think you played a little bit through it more than I did, Valhalla also has similar kinds of shark jumps with mythology.
Yes, it was off the top of my head, I know one of the DLC was involved with the like some druids and
The pagan
pagan
witches.
witches.
Mhm.
But mostly like within the main story itself, you can actually go to Asgard and you it's like you are one of the gods. But the whole thing is framed as you are having a hallucination to gain wisdom in your own journey. So you're good doing this, but you're also like meeting Fenrir and Loki and Thor and all of these characters and like have side quests and main quests and you can explore the entire area of Asgard. And I kept thinking, when is this going to end? I'm confused. Did I fall into a separate game on top of this? And
Yeah.
eventually I just left the area and then went back to the regular world because I was just like, that's like a whole thing. Like I could spend 15 hours in by itself.
Yeah, that's the Fate of Atlantis DLC. That sounds like that. Like, but
Mhm.
you still play as your character. You still play as
Right.
either Alexius or Cassandra, whoever you picked up. And it's just so funny that I don't know if it's a lack of ideas or them being like, how colossally stupid can we make things? That's how they dove in
Hmm.
with this reimagining of the Assassin's Creed series. And to me, it's like it remains bittersweet because I'm like, is this the last time I'll get to experience it this way? Because of the news that we heard 2 weeks ago, where they're trying to take the thing. Still, I
Yeah.
still remain crossing fingers that Odyssey and Valhalla already have like a live service element to it, that this is just what it is and they just keep what it works. Because if it's just like that and they just like make it just that one game and then just like release this DLC packs, because that's the thing, the biomes that you explore in like Fate of Atlantis, they're separate completely from Greece that you were in the main game. That's like already such a big ass map that you added so much to it and you can still explore and be like, man, there's more to this because of all the islands and all of that. And
Right.
I would hope that.
I I like there's still a part of me that has a soft spot for the series,
Mhm.
obviously. Um then there's like these two warring sides of me. You know, there's two wolves inside of you: the purest Assassin's Creed fan
Mhm.
and the new fan that wants cool stuff.
Yeah.
And like I feel for the developers that were working on this series for so long, they just wanted to do something different. So it's like I
Mhm.
respect that.
That's why
And when they
Origins
don't
happened.
have,
Mhm.
yeah, and when they don't have the freedom, they try to make it work in whatever they can't make, and I understand what they did. I still think Assassin's Creed really lent itself to that grounded, like there's some sci-fi elements to it, but
Mhm.
it really is just like a history story
Yeah.
almost with like a couple added
I
characters.
feel it's their own fault though, because remember that Assassin's Creed at one point became an annualized franchise where we got
Yeah,
one every single year.
and it should have ended like long before that too.
Or have more space. Like what they're doing now, they should have done back then. Like I don't think people would have burned out on the classic formula of one hit assassinations and the old control scheme and all that lasted from the first Assassin's Creed all the way to Syndicate.
Right.
Because by and Syndicate's suffering was because Unity suffered. That
Yeah.
Unity burns so many people because it's the same formula even in a new generation. This is broken AF. There has too many bugs, like no face people with like
I would
the
dare say if it had worked in as intended, it could have been very strong
oh
because
yes,
I loved the core gameplay loop, the solid
free running
the
that going
free
up and down.
running that you could like hold X to go up, circle to go down, and he would go through the process that you needed, and that was fantastic.
Hmm.
Um,
But
I
it didn't
think it
cook,
just
and they
yeah,
didn't cook it. That was a
it just
problem.
didn't end up right. And like even though they said, "Oh, we made combat more difficult," like you could crush people once you got it down.
Hmm.
It's like the same thing as mastering any mechanics. I was just wrecking people throughout those mansions and stuff, and I still think the heist co-op mode was fantastic where you had this huge sprawling mansion, you had four of you, and you said, all right, get in, get what you need, and then if you like aggro people, if you're stealthy, that doesn't matter, just get what you need. And it was awesome to watch everyone kind of use their own like ways to get through and all that.
And kind of like you mentioned, maybe this Infinity one, it's gonna try to go back to that concept, especially because you're letting it cook.
Yeah.
Because it's 2021 and they're aiming for that until like 2024. So that's like a long time to kind of let it cook. Like Unity needed that more time, like because if they were not so rigid about we have to get one of these games every year, Unity could have be so much better. And it sucks that Syndicate, which I actually prefer, I prefer its story, I prefer its characters, I prefer its city, like suffered because people were already so burned by Unity that they were like that. Then they read it as they're just tired of this formula. Period. So let's go back to the drawing board and completely change it. Oh,
Right.
what's that? Witcher 3 that came out the same year as Syndicate was so successful. Let's copy that. Then 2 years later, Origins came out and had it had elements of Witcher, but it was until Odyssey that they went full Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Same with Valhalla with like the dialogue, even the way the dialogue's presented, it's straight out of The Witcher 3. And
I will say what really helped them was the strength of their voice actor, the main voice actor they chose, both for Cassandra and for Eivor.
mhm.
Both are great, but apparently the guy's voice for Eivor is just fantastic because he's the one that I spent the most time with.
Yeah, in Odyssey, I cringe when I hear people went through the whole game with Alexios because I'm
Uh,
like, why would you do that to yourself with such an aggro, like macho, like how he
huh.
speaks most of it? I was like, I started with Alexios because I'm like, because everyone kept saying you should play as Cassandra. I was like, I'm gonna be the hipster. I'm gonna play as Alexios.
Oh
Then after a few hours, I was like, I don't want this. And then I switched
man.
to
Uh huh.
Cassandra, and then I switched to Cassandra, and then the more I started like decking her, be like, oh my god, this is the Wonder Woman game I've never had. Like, especially now with the Fate of Atlantis DLC that now deals with mythological creatures and characters, and Wonder Woman's about the Greek pantheon. Also, if you really think
Hmm.
about it, it's like it's all about a Wonder Woman game in name. so yeah, it's I'm gonna keep going because kind of like I mentioned, like I had heard the Fate of Atlantis DLC was like so important for where then things went in Valhalla, and I'm like, man, now I believe it. And I would even tell, and the best part is that if you don't have to grind to get to the Fate of Atlantis DLC, they added a shortcut. They're like, do you want
Which
experience
is
now?
good. They did that
Go for it.
similarly with The Witcher, and to show how fake of a gamer I am, I still never actually did any of the DLC for The Witcher. I
Dude,
tried, I tried Heart of Stone, and I just couldn't get through it. But I'm glad they added that option to, hey, we're gonna just give
skip.
you a pre-made character, just jump right in
Which is
and
good
have fun with it.
because if you want people to experience the thing, the idea, especially when those games are like, especially these new Assassin's Creed games, they're designed for the grind in mind with like the XP grind, especially with Odyssey. That
Yeah,
one was the canary in the coal mine for the is Ubisoft exploiting gamers for them to like buy the XP booster microtransaction by making them really grindy.
yeah,
And I'm not ashamed to say that I did it. I did buy it just to try it. Be like, and it does increase a lot of, but then it gives you the option to turn it off. So I was like, I'm gonna turn this off. They got my $10 anyway, but I want to really see it, and it feels like they tune it so you have to see almost everything, which makes sense. It depends if you enjoy the gameplay loop or not. If you want to engage with literally everything, because not every side content is everything is built the same. That's the beauty of The Witcher. Like I didn't finish The Witcher, by the way. I never like finished it. I fell off of it and never was able to go back. And knowing that there's a next gen version coming, I think this year still, I might just wait for there to continue if it hopefully transfers my saves. And in Witcher, you don't mind doing the side quests because the side quests are even better than the main story.
yeah.
Yeah, in Odyssey is different. It's there's a lot of side quests of someone stole this from me. Can you get it back? Okay. Oh my god, they killed my family. Can you kill them? It's like it's very simple. A lot of the side quests
And
are
then you got to
eventually
go to the same bandit camp for all the same different
yeah.
quests.
There's so many bandit camps in that game. Also, it's like it's endless. So yeah, and the Fate of Atlantis biome, it's big but not big enough that I spent all Sunday just clearing it out because I just love the colorfulness of
Hmm.
being in it, and it also has teleporters. The enemies have lasers that shoot at you. It's like it's so
What
crazy.
the heck?
It's crazy. It's like there's like statues that then become alive statues that then if you don't dodge they open their hands and shoot lasers that completely freeze your
Oh my
ability
goodness.
meter. So it's like it's crazy. So I have to finish the Hades section, which is episode 2, and I wonder where they're gonna take me in episode 3. So yeah, I'll keep playing that. But enough of what we've been playing, Paul. we got
Yes,
a we got a few news, and especially this first one's a little troubling. So press X.
for some news.
All right, Paul. So this one kind of broke after we recorded, and it has just gotten a little worse.
Yeah.
And it's so packed that I don't think we can really cover it other than just give like a general one
And even if
of
we
that.
tried to, I don't think we're in the place to
Yeah,
properly state
exactly. So that's why
things.
like we just have to mention. So We talk about Ubisoft a lot about how like recently they're doing some dumb moves, and even last year they were ravaged by the Me Too movement that hit the gaming community back in June of
which
2020.
was long overdue
Yeah, it
to
was long overdue. Yeah, so
understand our statement on that side of it.
oh yeah, absolutely. So Ubisoft for like the last year and change, they've been the ones that have been facing like legal issues. They were on the news that about like sexual impropriety, harassment in the workplace, and all of that. However, there was another company that was even worse that was happening, and it was even worse. Activision Blizzard. Following a 2-year investigation that started back in 2019, the freaking state of California has filed a massive lawsuit against Activision Blizzard over frat boy culture. A behemoth of a lawsuit, to put it lightly, that it could take us just hours to read out loud. And some of like the details being raised against the company are truly horrifying. Like the one that I saw at first, I was like, oh my god, was a situation where sexual harassment led a woman at this company to commit suicide, which is insane. And if all true, this should cause the Activision Blizzard to sweat in a way many company wouldn't. The state of California, not an independent firm, the freaking state of California went after Activision over this whole thing. And man, when you have this, pardon me if I'm wrong, if the state is the one that sues you, you're in a lot of trouble, right?
That's not a good thing. Yep.
Yeah,
Um, it blew my mind just how bad it was here to hear like how many people, and I think it has about 1,000
yeah,
signatures for the petition.
yeah. That
For
condemned the response from
right,
Activision Blizzard. The lawsuit was posed, and obviously, like when you have a lawsuit, you have the right to respond and like deliver a statement, and then Activision Blizzard delivered one that said that it mischaracterized the situation and all that. It was like disingenuous, and then people within the company, specifically the people at Blizzard that do World of Warcraft, they were like, "F that, that's so disingenuous. This is a problem,"
mm,
and they all 1,000 people signed a letter condemning Activision Blizzard's response to this lawsuit. That's when you know it's serious, like
jeez,
very very serious. And even former owners of Blizzard, like Mike Morhaime, the developer, the creator of Blizzard, obviously he's not there anymore, but he was like,
yeah,
he didn't shift blame. He was like, I failed you all people, I failed that, because you can easily be like, you can easily try to downplay it
hmm,
in PR speak and all that,
can
but
shift blame like,
and,
oh,
and
I
shift blame,
wasn't,
like
I'm
yeah,
not there anymore.
yeah, exactly. So it's, yeah, I wouldn't talk more about it because I feel like especially with this, I'm gonna link a couple things in the description for the story. Like there's a Bloomberg article that detail a lot of the things I've been heard. There's a great YouTuber called Richard Hogue. He's actually a lawyer. He
Hmm.
does something called virtual legality. He examines a lot of legal stuff in the world of entertainment while also doing normal legal advice. Fine, it's called Hogue Law, and he does long breakdowns. He reads it and tries to put it as objectively as possible, what things meant and all that. I'm gonna link that
Huh.
to this story because I feel they're better equipped to see to put the severity and how terrified Activision Blizzard should be, because especially if they take all of this in court, like especially if they don't settle and they take all this in court and they put all the evidence out there, and if the state of California found evidence of this suicide, like it's gonna like, could this potentially even bring Activision Blizzard to the brink, just in having to pay settlements and penalties, all of this?
It's really, it's such a sticky situation. It's like I'm glad they're being taken to task. I just wish it hadn't come to this point.
Mm-hmm.
For such a reason, I would hope that they would learn some more propriety from business practices and
Mm-hmm.
people saying, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be so scummy." But to the extent that somebody was completing suicide, and that there is just such a horrible culture over there that has kept people quiet for so long. It's like turned sour in your mouth when you think about it, and just knowing that like so many years have passed of nobody being able to deal with this instead of
Mhm.
just having to live silently in shame, but now finally it's starting to come to light. So it's like it's not going to fully mean what it needs to as if it had happened when it did, but at least it's happening now.
Oh yes, and a reckoning needed to happen to this company no matter what. And this was me because remember I keep saying what's obviously I had mentioned that Ubisoft has slowly become my least favorite company due to the recent moves and not listening to fans and all that. But a company I've always hated, like I have hated with a passion over the past few years,
Yeah.
has been Activision. And I'm now in the sticky situation where to speak with my wallet, should I just boycott at this point?
Yeah.
And to that, I'd say it's actually much easier for me to boycott because last year they blue balled me with, oh, we bringing back Crash. Oh, we're bringing back Tony Hawk. We're not just
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
a Call of Duty machine and all
Hmm.
that things. So because I'm just so sick and tired of Call of Duty, like in general, that is like, and they have sacrificed so much to just feed that beast. That now knowing all of this, to me, that just makes it so much easier to just ignore them, to not like engage with them. It says that
Right.
my it's tricky because my brother, he's such a big Warzone player. Like that's all he plays. He goes to competitions and all of that. And how many people are so entrenched with their Call of Duty addiction? Because that's what I said. Like Call of Duty has a hold in so many people that it's
Hmm.
just what everyone plays. Is like they become tryhards in it and all that. That could they hear about this horrible mess and try to take Activision to heart? And I don't think they can because that game has. Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
Ah,
I don't
stupid.
really hear much after
Okay,
that though.
yeah, it's a blender.
Oh, I
It's
thought it
a
was a truck driving by.
oh no, oh thank God no. R.I.P.
Vegetable man.
Vegetable man, but well, they're probably blending vegetables there, so vegetables are still. But yeah,
Vegetable man lives on in the blender.
yeah, because to me, like, do you remember what happened to Activision Blizzard 2 years ago?
Um,
Hong Kong, the Blitzchung thing.
I think so.
They
Yeah.
that they banned a Hong Kong player from like a Hearthstone tournament because
Yeah.
of he mentioned liberate Hong Kong because of the thing that was happening in Hong Kong, and then they basically an American company at the behest of their Chinese investment basically silenced these guy, and he
Yeah.
created such a crap storm of epic proportions back in like late 2019. Like everyone was attacking Activision Blizzard, like everyone was like shaming them for, and especially when they try to respond saying that they didn't do that um, at the behest of anyone telling them to do that. But it's like that's obviously BS. Like especially because Activision more than any other company has like has prostituted itself to appease the Chinese market so they can invest money, like billions of dollars into the company. And then by the time BlitzCon came out, like what did Blizzard do? They announced Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2. What happened after that? No one talked about Blitzchung. What will they do to try to like gaslight and try to like smoke screen the fact that they have something that could potentially ruin them with this lawsuit? Especially when you have the state that houses your office, your main office, coming at you like this.
Hmm.
And what will it take for people to just put their money where their mouth is and not support this company? To me, like to me personally, I'm just glad that I've gotten so sick and tired of their one franchise and knowing that they killed after they basically paid lip service with old games that appeal to me and absorbing those companies to just do to be support studios for established stuff within them is like f them. I'm done with Activision.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you because I don't know if you really keep playing Warzone with friends and
I
all that.
have,
Because
and that's what I was actually going to mention is that it's actually surprisingly easy for me to boycott them because
hmm
I just maybe like 2 weeks ago deleted Cold War
hmm
and Warzone, like at the time out of necessity because of storage space,
it's
but
horrible.
also
It's the one. It's the only game that takes so much space out
in
of
Cold War
everything
by
else.
itself, it was
100 gig.
221 gigabytes when I deleted it.
Yeah.
And that was a large majority of my PS5's hard drive. But
hmm
even beyond that, I realized that um, I don't remember who it was. There was this psychologist that talks about video games and the different ideas of things like executive dysfunction and things like how certain games are very good for you, but certain games really are not. And one of
hmm
those that he said was that Call of Duty actually will kind of regress your brain and will cause you to
Yeah.
have the quick stimulus of like victory, victory, victory. If you don't get the victory, jump right back in, get the next one.
hmm
And I'm not going to like blanket statement all of this, but you get the idea of there's certain things that just aren't good for you as a growing human. And I think that I would rather play certain games that are going to really push me in
hmm
either like my strategic use of something or even just to unwind. But that was one reason why I decided to delete it, because it just was, I could feel that desire, and like 6 hours would pass and I would get really nothing done
hmm
outside of maybe unlocking guns or attachments for the guns. And it was monkey brain go burr.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed to stop doing that or I was going to waste all my time. And funny, from a guy that was playing Battlefield last week, so
Yeah, but Battlefield is built different also.
there's a little
So,
different, yeah.
and you
But
haven't been playing Battlefield for a while.
needless to say, I decided to kind of cut that off, and I haven't really played anything else from Blizzard in a very long time.
Me neither. Mhm.
So I don't plan to go back to any of it, and now I just have even more of a reason not to.
Yeah, I got very late into Overwatch because obviously that was a paid game, and it being a very multiplayer centric game, that didn't appeal to me. It
Yeah,
started appealing when everyone but their mother gave it Game of the Year in 2016. So I was like, literally everyone is giving this stupid Game of the Year. I'll probably get it in a sale, and I got it like on summer 2017, and only
yep,
played it for like a couple hours. I was like, I get it.
yeah,
This isn't for me. So that was like the last thing I played of Blizzard, other than Diablo 3 back in the day when they released the console version that included Reaper of Souls, which was a
hmm,
really good game. Like I like to give credit where credit's due. They haven't really released anything like since 2016, so it's not
yeah,
like I've been in the Blizzard ecosystem for a while. One thing that I'm really thankful, you have to remember Destiny used to be not owned by Activision, but it had its association with
right.
Activision. And
So
they
you dodged a bullet right there.
oof, yeah. Because imagine if like especially because Destiny's like that is my shooter.
Yeah,
If I want to play a shooter, that's the one I go. And to me, like Destiny is a problem for me that when I get in it, I get in it.
mm,
I have to like find other things to get me out of it. And Bungie itself, like they made long statements about like how they believe these reports and all that, and they condemned harassment in the workplace and things like that. And I'm like, baller. Even though you're not part of that, I'm glad that you're still taking a stand
yeah. I mean,
because
because
you
a lot of the people that are in there were in there whenever
mhm,
Activision was over them with their partnership.
exactly. So yeah, that would have put me in a bit of a pickle if Destiny was still a part of Activision while all of this was happening. Because then how could I exercise my own boycott of them?
Yeah,
And thankfully, even like to me, like even Black Ops Cold War, that's not a very good game to me personally. The campaign was fine. That's as far as I would go. I didn't like the zombie mode. The multiplayer I thought was worse than the Modern Warfare one. So
I'd agree with that
yeah,
because they
it's so
weren't
much
able to
easier to walk out of.
utilize.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't able to utilize the new engine anyway, so it was still on the
hmm
old Black Ops engine.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it, and I love the sounds of everything. personally because there's something about those gun noises that just do it for me. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm kind of glad that I had started weaning myself off of it anyway.
Mhm.
And I was looking forward to whatever sequel of Modern Warfare that's going to come out. I don't think it's this year; it might be next.
Yeah,
So
it
I've
would
got a
have to
little
be next
time,
year. Yeah,
but
so
hopefully they'll make
I
positive
would hope,
changes.
yeah, exactly. I would hope that this year's Call of Duty game, it hasn't even been announced yet,
Hmm.
and I'm making a stand. I'm not buying it myself. If my brother wants to get it, that's on him. But I'm not putting a cent on them. Like, I'm done with this company right now
Yeah,
until whatever results from this like creates meaningful change. Like, and from there, like, I don't even know if we even have to keep covering them at all. Like, I don't want to give them any limelight after this, like, because by giving them limelight, that's how easy they can gaslight and ignore stuff. Because just remembering what happened with Blitzchung and the whole Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2
yeah,
situation, it takes just one big announcement for everyone to forget, because we live in a very in the moment kind of society that one bad news can be like overshadowed by another different kind of news so quickly, and then
yeah.
we forget it happened. That was 2020 for us a lot of the time. So yeah, and I keep saying, like, who would have thought in 2021, out of the three main third party companies, EA would be the one that's like doing everything right.
I'm surprised
I'm so
beyond belief,
surprised.
but I was even just thinking about Jedi Fallen Order the other day and just
Hmm.
like, man, maybe I want to go back and replay it again because like they when
I'm gonna
they
platinum again it.
try they really do a good job.
Yeah,
And I'll give them credit where it's
and
due.
they better keep riding that positive way, because EA just this year with It Takes Two, like, topping many people's front runner game of the year candidate lists. Rocket Arena,
Oh, I
no,
forgot that was them.
or what was it?
Knockout
No,
City.
Knockout City. Yeah, Rocket
Okay,
Arena. It was the one that failed for them.
yeah.
Knockout City, another great one.
Hmm.
Like, the continued success of Apex Legends, even when they try to ruin it with microtransaction galores and all that. And
I mean the core gameplay loop is
mhm,
very positive. I mean, you talk about Monkey Brain Go Burr. Like you've got like 16, 17 minutes max, but you know the match is going to end within that time, and it's a really good self-contained loop. It's really easy to jump out and jump back in. And I was talking to you about character design for games that might not you might not vibe with as much, but they did a really good job with that. And even backpacking off of Titanfall's sort of success and
mhm,
their immediate burial of it, it's still succeeding off of that universe.
exactly. So, but yeah, it's so funny, and I'm glad for them, because I've always thought that EA always had great potential undone
Hmm.
by. Out of the three companies, when greed strikes, EA for some reason was always the one stepping on the rakes, like stepping on one and getting hit in
Really,
the
though.
head. Yeah, more than the other ones. But thankfully, like, Activision is in the worst position possible. Ubisoft is burying its own grave with like the decisions they're taking.
Hmm.
That I'm just shocked that EA finally gets like gets to comparatively look good
They've
next
got
to
all
them.
of the successes so far. The last like 4 or 5 plus Battlefield coming out later this year.
Mhm.
They've slowly started doing it,
And
which
especially the thing that they confirmed, number two.
yeah,
So, but speaking of talking about EA, like, they held their EA Play event, basically their E3 conference last Thursday, and amongst many updates of their usual lineup of games, so their next sports games, what's coming to Apex, what's next for Knockout City, and detailing more modes for Battlefield 2042 to kind of like justify the price. Like, the big highlight for Battlefield 2042 is the portal they
which I can
announced.
talk about that for a
Yeah,
minute, but I don't know if you want to finish this
yeah,
first.
yeah. No, say the portal thing. Yeah,
So yeah, for the portal, at first I was very confused about the trailer. I was not really understanding what they were doing, but the whole idea is they are bringing in the assets of like 4 different previous games to
Battlefield
allow
3,
you to
Bad Company
basically have
2,
like
like,
a forge mode in
mm-hmm,
Battlefield to make like era versus era, or
mm-hmm,
like they think they said they had a squad of modern seals versus like 1,000 or 100 Germans with the knives and
Uh-huh.
stuff. It's like the craziest things you can come up with, and easy ways to filter your searches to find crazy new things. So it's like, even if you get tired of the main Battlefield loop and your
Hmm.
usual stuff, you can fall back on something wacky like this. And they even said they're going to have like PvE modes that you can just have with, okay, you want AI crews, you want to play like regular games with the AI in it, or do you want to do something crazy? I mean, we were talking about Battlefront 2 not giving you anything more than an arcade mode with
Hmm.
the AI, but this is going to let you play the full Battlefield game with AI companions and enemies to shoot, and like it's, they say for certain things it might lessen your unlocking of certain
Hmm.
attachments and stuff, but you're still going to be able to do a lot of these things without having to worry about jumping in and getting crushed by somebody that's way better than you at something. You can now probably learn all of your vehicles, which was one of the biggest problems in past Battlefields, with
Hmm.
no way to like train. Even in like I think Battlefield 4 had like a training mode, and sometimes they'll institute that, but for some they just didn't bother with it and didn't understand why people wanted to learn. But back on the subject of it is just the idea that you can have this in such a consent, like a centralized place, is
It makes
mind
it the
blowing.
ultimate. It makes it the ultimate Battlefield
And
game.
I could
Like,
dare say they could make this work for several years
hmm,
before moving on to something else, because you get not just your futuristic, but you get your past wars and stuff, and you get all of that within this.
and not
It's
only that, like when you have a game that has such a customizable element to it, that's
yes,
how you keep your game alive for years to come. Why was Halo 3 so freaking popular?
immense
E-
customization.
because of Forge. The Forge, like having a Forge in anything, it's so important for like
People were
the
making D-Day in Forge back in the day, and now you're going to be able to go full circle and do it again.
and it's a way to go wacky. That's the thing. Like when you have a customized, if you don't take yourself so damn seriously,
Yeah,
and you do something that can be so customizable to the point where you can spend hours of your life just like toying around and creating so many different scenarios, upload those scenarios for people to find them, and just like on a server list, kind of like Battlefield 4, and
right.
do that. Like I feel like for all like there was the Brouhaha, like why is this just a multiplayer only Battlefield game that only has like 7 maps? It doesn't matter because it has all of this other
And now
stuff.
you can create like whatever you want in this game now,
Yeah,
and I
so
love it.
so yeah, the Battlefield 2042 package got more attractive after that presentation,
yes.
and also like it's staying there. Like on the other things that they announced, the important was left at the end. They finally officially announced what we heard rumored a few weeks back in the episode. I had my Pepe Silva moment.
Yep.
Dead Space is back officially, back from the dead, pun intended.
What
Now
fun.
on yeah, now under the helm of EA Motive, the guys that provided support for Battlefront 2 and other Star Wars games, and also they were mainly the guys that did Squadrons,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's coming back in full remake mode. So they confirmed that, because remember the rumors is, will this be a
A remaster.
remaster like the well-received Mass Effect Legendary Edition from May, or will this be a full-on remake? So they went the Resident Evil 2 route, fully remaking the first game.
Which I'm fine with that, honestly.
Yeah, here are some
I
of the details that they announced in an interview that they did at IGN, which I'm going to link in the description. It's going to be made from the ground up. So I think, so yeah, Resident Evil 2 remake, they're getting all the assets, but bringing it from being not updating anything, but building everything from scratch. And it's being built on EA's own Frostbite engine, the engine that they use for Battlefront 2, the engine that they use for Battlefield, and the engine they basically do for a lot of
which is a
games.
solid engine.
I'll get into that in a little bit. The original trilogy was made using Visceral's own in-house engine. It didn't have a name, but they made the technology for that trilogy.
Uh-huh.
It's targeting the new generation of consoles, so no PS4 and Xbox One. Bye the old gens. So this means that they'll target no loading times compared to the original. If you play the original Dead Space,
Yeah.
to go through the different areas, you have to like get into a train, and then there's a little load. There was a loading time for you to load the next area. So if they can make it more seamless, that's going to be really cool.
Right.
They'll include cut content originally planned for the original. So when they were building it and then they had to cut areas to kind of get the game done, so they might add those back in.
Hmm.
And it will also include more overt references to where the series was headed with Dead Space 2 and 3 compared to the standalone nature of the original. So the first game is very standalone.
It
It does
is.
it doesn't like it I don't think it makes sense why it was standalone. Like they made it as a one off not knowing if it was gonna hit, and then
Yeah.
obviously they put money into a sequel later. So so they'll probably include more of that to make it more like damn, why did we shut up? And yeah, there we go. So yeah, so it was headed with the space. So yeah, where the series was headed with Dead Space 2 and 3 compared to the standalone nature of what I was mentioning. So giving more of an idea that there was more planned, and apparently much more that you can see in the interview IGN made, which I'm gonna link. The Frostbite engine thing, it's interesting because it will make the game look astonishingly beautiful, but there's been a lot of scuttlebutt that the Frostbite engine is a very hard engine to work with
Hmm.
when you're not working on a first-person shooter. Like that's the reason why Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda failed because they were being built on Frostbite and it didn't have the tools necessary because they had to build those kind of tools within the Frostbite engine because that was a shooter engine. So
That makes
unless
sense.
they finally made a way for it to work on third person instead of having EA Moto had to build things from the ground. Do you know why what you call it Squadrons was first person?
Was it because it was
The
in
Frostbite.
Frostbite?
Yeah,
Huh.
it was the only way that they could make that game quickly without
Huh.
having to rock the boat too much because it needed to remain in first person. Even though there were third person modes in you can see the ship in third person when you're playing in Battlefield 2. But
Right.
because they make but that was just on more secluded areas. That was more just in the multiplayer side with
Hmm.
just very few campaign missions. Like in order to not rock the boat much, just keep it in first person because that's what Frostbite does. Dead Space
Interesting.
is not gonna be a first person game. Like
Right.
if they want to like keep it to the
Actually
spirit of the
remake it.
original one. So
I would think Dead Space could really utilize the Frostbite engine. The reason being, my theory, is that because there's so few moments in the original Dead Space where you need to see people's faces.
mhm,
The few times you do, you just put a lot of work into those moments, and then the whole rest of the time, he's got his mask on. You don't see really too many other humanoid characters. Two has a few more, and then three, it feels like they take their masks off for everything. But
mhm,
the first one was like a very much deadpan. You were an engineer stuck way over your head with all the monsters in there. So that's why I think you could really make something work out of that. The environments are second to none for Frostbite Engine. Like the ability to get atmospheric horror out of it, I think is like the ceiling for that is really high. Um, I agree that it's going to be a lot of creative challenges they're going to have to overcome with it.
mhm,
But I think that it has a lot of the right building blocks for
mhm.
something like this if they just have the creativity and the time for this.
Yeah, I just hope that they give this remake the time, love, and care that it deserves. That they don't rush it, and they provide, and that the people over at Dice that work on the Frostbite engine gives enough tools to Motive to get this right,
Yeah.
instead of having to waste time like Andromeda and Anthem lost so much time trying to build the tools they needed for that engine because EA didn't want to license any other engine outside what they already owned, and that became a problem. So I would hope, especially because EA seems like they care now that this is
Yeah.
not gonna be a crap job like it did, especially the quality of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition itself. Like it could have been so easily pooped out. Like
They put some love into that.
and they put some love into that, and they didn't put it in a new engine. They allowed it to. work with what they had, and they didn't rush it. They let it. That was rumored to come out in 2020. They let it come out in 2021 to get
Which that makes sense.
for them to get it right, and there is nothing wrong, really wrong with it. So, like I said, like EA seems in a better place now. So I'm
I'm
confident, and
wondering what changed with that, but that might be a question for another day.
actually, I know what changed. Jedi Fallen Order. That was the inflection point for
Well,
them.
I was thinking more on the idea of like leadership, but I
They
mean, I
have the
guess it
same
makes
people.
sense.
They have the same president. They have the same CFO. The same people that have been there are still there
It's just they saw the numbers from the heavy single player and went, "Oh, wait a minute, this
because
works."
they saw that and the critical reception. So they were like,
That's true.
that gave them the like Jedi Fallen Order was like the first time like a box product of them like became so highly regarded after the last time they had a really highly regarded product was Titanfall 2 in 2016. And then everything that came
And they let
after.
that die.
Yeah, and exactly, they let that die at no fault of the game, at no fault of the game.
Yeah.
So they had to go through like hell after what they did. It was like a soul for a soul. Oh, you let Titanfall 2, the best games of the last generation, die at the vine because if you're trying to take the word of Call of Duty, well, you have to pay for that. And then 2017 and 2018, like everything they released was dog crap.
Yeah.
So
I will say they did hit the ball out of the park with Battlefield 1. That was a fantastic execution.
that was
And that's
before
what killed
Titanfall.
Titanfall.
Yes,
Because
that's why I said
that
like
was the same year, wasn't it? I thought that was what it
the week
came out
before.
right. Yeah. Okay.
Battlefield One was
Um.
that's why I said like the last super great EA
Yeah.
game was Titanfall because it
Battlefield
came after.
1,
Yeah,
Titanfall, and then Call of Duty was like right after it.
yeah.
Or
So it took them 2.5 years of a soul for a soul for karma to catch up to them,
true.
and now like they're in a good spot right now. Hopefully it stays. So number three, Paul, how big are you into the sports arena, like the
Very
game?
minimally. The closest that I get was as a kid, of course, with Madden, and then a little bit of 2K basketball, but not much else. What are we dealing with today?
Yeah. So you have no polls in the soccer FIFA area.
No,
Okay. So
I respect it, but I know I have no skill in it.
yeah, and oh yeah. so what happens is that in the for when it comes to EA Sports in the US, FIFA, the soccer or football for everyone that's outside the US,
Yeah,
it doesn't have the resonance as the other sports. But FIFA is so humongous all over the world
yeah.
outside the US, and there's always been two competitors in that space. So
Pro
obviously EA's
Evolution
on
Soccer,
FIFA and Konami's on Pro Evolution Soccer.
which
That
I have
used
heard of.
Yeah, that used to be called Winning 11 back in the day before they changed the name to Pro Evolution Soccer.
Huh.
So big changes happening to the Konami side. So they're changing names again for the third time. So it went from Winning 11 to Pro Evolution Soccer, and now they're calling it eFootball. And more importantly, they're turning it into a free-to-play live service game, which
Now
is a
that's interesting.
which is a huge stark contrast to EA's game, where it continues its endless yearly annualization of a full price game. So like EA is like in the business of every year it's gonna put a box product that's gonna be full price, that's basically a roster change and tiny minimal improvements because you can't quite meaningfully improve a game in just one in yearly cycles. So FIFA for the most part has always been the most popular of the two, thanks to it winning the licensing agreements compared to Pro Evolution Soccer. So whenever you see a soccer match, like in the World Cup and all of that, like there's like FIFA. Sometimes you see a console that's sponsoring, so sometimes it's Xbox or sometimes it's PlayStation, and then there's like FIFA monikers
Yeah.
that are the ones that are used in the game. So because of its authenticity to the real thing, that's why people always
Hmm.
gravitated towards FIFA. Yet some always make the argument that the gameplay in Pro Evolution Soccer was the better of the two. FIFA, it's a game, probably the game I hate the most in my entire life. I hate
Really?
because FIFA is so popular down here. That's what everyone almost always had. That was all my friends used to like playing.
So you're just
I
sick of it?
hated it because that's the thing. Not only was I sick of it, I hated playing it because I never liked the gameplay of it.
Okay.
As someone that values fast response to the buttons I press, nothing would like drive my like turn my hair out, like trying to press the kick button and waiting for a long ass animation to complete for the ball to
Yeah.
for the ball to
Okay.
go in,
I know what you're
and
talking about.
then I get like, and sometimes I will make the pass and it wouldn't pass it where I wanted to. So it was like it required a lot of forgiveness from many people, and I don't
Hmm.
never understood it. And from what I understood, I never had PES because FIFA is the one that always was bought here because again, which one's the most popular one? PES has always been the one that people say it's better because it's so much more responsive, but because it didn't have the licenses, it's not as attractive as the other one. So this is now interesting because now the PES gets to go into the market as a hey, come try it for free, and they can obviously, and that's the thing. Like FIFA, not only is a full price game, it has Ultimate Team, which is like a card based, the equivalent if you getting if you collecting of a card collecting game, if you getting packs, so you can like put in like mega. Did you remember that, like card collecting and making like your collection of things and trading cards with people with the ones that you didn't have and all that?
A little
Uh,
bit, yeah.
yeah, FIFA would have that, and they would make billions of dollars every year. So on top of it being a full price competitor, I wonder if eFootball is going to be the one that also pursues that kind of monetization model, but it also has the advantage that it's free to play. So instead of you having to buy the box, it's now
Yeah.
it's a service game.
I would
And
think that a game like that really benefits from the idea of service. Like, of all the things that everyone wants to
yes,
jump as a service,
sports games is the
this is one
perfect
of the
one.
perfect ones where you just iterate on it, update as it goes, and like,
Hmm.
hey, you want the update? Pay like a little extra, maybe, of like whatever it's called, the jump in graphics or however you want to call it, maybe. But then you just keep kind of playing the core gameplay loop of the
Hmm.
same teams, the updated rosters and stuff. You could just play that for free. If this always felt weird that they were making you pay a full price for that.
Exactly. I wouldn't mind if it was like every year, here's a $20 version of this game because it's a
Yeah.
roster update. So I think Konami found a way to really crack in now. Because now I think this is going to be a nice test bed to really tell us if live service is actually a good future for sports game. I don't think live service is the future for every game because there's barely any time, but the sports community is very committed to the
Hmm.
sports simulation aspect of their games. So I'm really curious to see if this is going to move the needle for Konami, especially because it seems that slowly Konami is getting back into the game. Like we heard the Bloober thing that may or may not signify that it confirms Silent Hill's return. Now this, like they've been quiet for a while, and now they're like making some interesting moves. So we'll see where that goes. So
I'm
now
really hoping
moving,
so.
yeah, now moving into a different kind of genre, a different kind of story. We are hitting sales milestones for a couple of key franchises, Paul. So first one, let's go into the fighting realm community. So WB and NetherRealm confirmed that their latest entry in the Mortal Kombat series, Mortal Kombat 11, has sold an astonishing 12 million copies to date, with the lifetime sales of the Mortal Kombat franchise reaching a total of 73 million since the franchise started back in the 90s. Context: according to Nikon analyst Daniel Ahmad on Twitter, this puts it over other fighting game franchises like Super Smash Bros. That has 65.1 million,
Hmm.
Tekken, which has 51 million, and Street Fighter, the one that people would say is probably the most popular one, but according to who?
Yeah.
46 million for Street Fighter.
And that's, I guess this is the whole series overall.
Yeah, the whole series for all of them.
Oh,
The entire Tekken series, the entire Street Fighter series, the entire
wow.
Smash Bros. Series. To be fair, like Mortal Kombat has a lot of games. One, two,
They
three,
do,
four, Deadly
and
Alliance, and
Street Fighter's last game, technically, I mean, if you count expansions, of course, but Street Fighter 5 came out like, what was it, six
five
something years ago?
5 years ago. Yeah, in
5 years ago?
2016. Yeah, and it wasn't well received. It was a
Yeah.
PS4 exclusive, and it launched half baked because they needed it out for the Capcom tour, like the championship tour and all that. So they were like, we gotta release it now for our competition. We're gonna patch things later, and then Street Fighter was dormant for a while. Like after Street Fighter 3, it went dead like years
Hmm.
until like Street Fighter 4 came back in like 2008 on PS3 and 360. So Street Fighter's always been the one that you always see play in tournaments. Obviously, there's. I'm surprised Marvel versus Capcom is not here. It
Yeah,
shows me it's even more niche than I even gave it credit for, despite it being such a staple of Evo and all of that. If you want to check try to find like the overall sales
that's what I
of
was gonna try looking up
Marvel
out of
versus. The
curiosity.
fact that they put in here makes me think it's even lower than Street Fighter.
So, according to this videogamesales.fandom.com,
Hmm.
it has 16 titles, Marvel vs. Capcom, with 9.9 million sales.
What? Only
That's
that? That's bad.
so yeah. I mean, so that kind of makes sense when you really think about it. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out in 2010.
11, 2011.
11.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, I see that now. Okay. Then after that, it
Infinite.
was just yeah, it was Infinite, which was a few years ago, but still, like that's even if you count all of those expansions. Apparently, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 wasn't initially received the best either. It kind of grew,
Ultimate
from what
was
I
like
was
where it
told.
really, yeah, it received it reviewed respectively. I remember IGN gave it like an 8.5 when it launched, but then until it became Ultimate Marvel versus Capcom 3, which actually was I purchased on PS4 because they when they announced Infinite, they also announced simultaneously Ultimate versus Marvel versus Capcom 3 was coming to current gen at the time. So yeah, it's interesting that the ones that are most popular in like Evo and all of that.
I would almost say that one reason as well is because this was, I mean, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was the heyday of arcades time,
Mhm.
and maybe it wasn't as popular as a home console
Yeah,
game.
yeah, probably exactly. I think you got a point, but it also then puts into context like how impressive Mortal Kombat is that it has sold 73 million. Like
Which
I,
I will say though, the fact that Mortal Kombat and NetherRealm was able to secure the licensing for so many properties in that last game by itself, the story mode being surprisingly great, plus
mhm,
the aftermath DLC, which added like a whole nother
campaign.
story campaign as
Mhm.
well. And we're not even talking about Injustice, but I mean the last like
Yeah, is Injustice included in this? That's
I
what
would
it
say
makes it.
not because that's
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat series, and Injustice
Uh
isn't
huh.
considered the same as them.
Yeah, even though it's the same engine, the same
Right.
fighting engine.
It's the same developers, but it's not the same series. So that's why this is actually still. I mean, it's impressive, but I think it's well earned.
I guess people really love their fatalities to own it and just having like a place to showcase the brutality of the fatality.
And
So
it's the only place you can have Alien versus Spawn and
Spawn
Rambo and
and Joker.
RoboCop and Joker and
Yeah.
the Terminator and like just the freaking crazy amount of like 80s and 70s and 90s era heroes and anti-heroes jumping in on that by the end. Like I'm not even a fan of it, and I was like, oh shoot, that's really impressive. Like I would play as them. I'd buy that if I was like a fighting game person.
Yeah. I think the whole story mode component of those games really makes a difference because these other ones don't have one. I think Tekken does, but even
Tekken
then, like
does, but it's it's just
comparatively.
wild all over the place. It's yeah, it's a little weird, but for sure, and extremely difficult to beat the last boss. But that's also Mortal Kombat's story mode.
Oh yeah, like shock, freaking shock hand.
Yep.
So as for what NetherRealm will be working on next, they did announce a few weeks back that they're ending the support for new content from MK11. So
Yep.
as is, it's just gonna remain online with what's there. So that pretty much signals the move they're officially moving to the next thing. Here's
Hmm.
what's interesting though. I think they supported Mortal Kombat 11 longer than they usually support
They did.
their other ones because they're always on 2 year cycles.
It
Like
sounds like it was short, but it was actually much longer. Well, a little longer than Mortal Kombat 10, but
let's just say that if the usual cycle would have kept, we would have already heard and played the next game coming from after MK11 right now.
yes, yeah,
Because it's usually like starting from 2011, that's when Mortal Kombat 9 came out just as Mortal Kombat. but you knew it was Mortal Kombat 9.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, Injustice came out in 2013, and we heard about it in 2012. Then in 2014, we heard about Mortal Kombat X came out in 2015. Then in 2016, we heard Injustice 2 that came out in 2017. Then in 2018, until the Game Awards, that was December, they dropped the Mortal Kombat 11 trailer, and we were playing it on April 2019.
Yep.
So the Aftermath DLC came out in April 2020. So yeah,
It
we
kind of
should
took the
be.
place of an announcement.
Yeah, so that makes it makes it exciting because Mortal Kombat 11 was actually really solid. It felt like the perfection of their
Hmm.
formula. So as for what their next project is, one would think Injustice 3 because there's only two Injustice games.
Right. But
But there's been rumors
yeah,
that maybe the next thing they do is going to be in the Marvel realm.
that would be awesome. I mean, somebody said it could be even like a Marvel versus DC situation,
That could work.
because I mean, they're run by WB. All they would have to do is get this ability to put Marvel characters in, which, I mean, people have done that before,
And there
for
was
the
a
fighting
nine
game.
and there was a 1990s comic crossover of Marvel and DC also. So
Yeah.
it's not like it hasn't happened before. So
I don't know if I would want to, because it's gonna have all of the people coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh, you can't have this person beat this other person. Why can Joker beat up Superman with a crowbar?" And it's like, dude,
it's a
it's a
video
fighting
game.
game,
Yeah,
guys. Calm down. It's like the same argument that people were having. It's like, "Oh, you can't have a fighting game with Star Wars characters because the lightsaber would just beat everything."
yeah.
It's like,
But
that's
then if it was a fighting
missing
game,
the
we would
point.
get Masters of Terrascasi again, and you don't want that.
We all, yeah, I agree with that
Yeah,
as
you
well.
don't want that. Yeah,
I just want that Darth Maul game, man. Every
yeah,
time I think about it, every once in a while, and I cry.
yeah. The Darth Maul game that was supposed to be like Arkham Asylum.
Yep.
That would have been so cool,
And
man.
the Anyway, I'm
What a
gonna get
yeah,
myself on it.
what a mismanagement of that old LucasArts before the Disney
Yeah.
acquisition. Yeah,
But hey, I mean, at least now we know that we have a lot more availability to put Darth Maul into something, because he's now lived all the way up till right before New Hope. So that's
yes,
something. It used to be just prequels, and it was like, ah, well, they freaking killed him in the first movie. Oh well.
yeah.
But anyway,
And at least now, hey, maybe they put him in the Ubisoft Star Wars game. Who knows? And it's gonna be a microtransaction, Paul.
Lord.
And final story, it's also another sales milestone. With close to 2 months to go for the release of the director's cut. Yeah, it's like in 2 months. So if like past or record, we're recording past like when it would launch in two
Yeah.
months. Kojima Productions officially announced that Death Stranding's life-to-date sales on both PS4 and PC combined is a total of 5 million units sold. So first thing, while it's not as staggering a number as what we heard in the last story with Mortal Kombat, Death Stranding selling 5 million is mighty impressive considering it's the first official game of this independent version of Kojima Productions. Remember, Kojima Productions used to be a Konami thing.
Hmm.
Kojima left and made its own Kojima Productions. It is a brand new IP in a sea of sequels, and it managed to sell despite its incredibly weird, incredibly hard to grasp concept. Like, would you have expected a game like Death Stranding itself, like in its concept, to sell?
I would dare say, um, how many of those million sales returned the game after they beat it, or returned it after about 10 hours of playing? Who knows? But hey, the
It doesn't
sales
matter. It
counted.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter. Like
Um,
when you sell it, sell it. For context, Kojima's best-selling game is Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, which released as a cross-generation game for PS3, PS4, 360, Xbox One, and PC back in 2015. And that
Wait, it was
sold,
made for the PS3 and
yeah,
360?
yeah,
I thought only the I thought only Ground Zeroes was made for that.
nope, all of them.
Wow.
And I've seen videos of the 360 and the PS3 version.
It's
They're
bad.
rough,
Mm.
rough. And they sold a total of 7 million units in all those systems. So that
Wow.
Stranding was close to 2 million, was 2 million close to the top selling Kojima game with less platforms distributed. Imagine
Dang.
it had all those platforms in. That Stranding with only PS4 and then PC was able to sell 5 million. And it was weirder because it's not Metal Gear
Yeah.
established over years. So That's strange. It's this shows that the name Hideo Kojima has resonance enough
Hmm.
that people will flock to his next title. Well, it'll depend. It's like depending on how people ultimately feel about that Stranding. But I mean, if it managed to sell all of that, it means that the word of mouth is still solid enough for people to still give it a shot. So for a polarizing game like that, 5 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
And then as for what Kojima is working on next, after the director's cut release this September, obviously we've been talking about it for a few weeks. It's either the cloud-based game he may potentially do with Microsoft after his deal with Stadia fell through, or the and also the ongoing never-ending saga that connects him to the abandoned Blue Balls games fiasco.
You're gonna
Which,
trick my brain into thinking the developer studio is called Blue Balls Studio
yeah,
because I you keep calling it that, and I keep like I don't have the alternative put into my head. So I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that's the developer Blue Balls, right?
yes.
And then somebody's gonna look at me like I'm
I will say
crazy.
this: I don't regret calling them that after what they pulled late June.
And who knows what that's gonna be? But I've
Yeah, I
ugh.
mean, this week is the preload of the app.
But that's not even gonna really do anything,
Yeah, but
because you
that's the
can't get
thing.
into it.
Yeah, the API said it was going to be 48 gigs. So let's see if the API is correct. If it's
Hmm.
that big and supposedly it's going to have trailers that are going to be 5 to 12 minutes long, who else makes trailers that long, Paul?
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting close to the end of the madness, I hope.
I can't escape it, Alejandro.
Yeah.
Every time I think I'm free, you pull these conspiracies.
Yes.
Hmm.
Oh well, I mean it's fun. I love the conspiracy. It keeps me alive in the summer, and it keeps my hate burning. So that's the end of the news for today. At least it's not ending on a downer of a note like X Defiant last week.
Amen to that.
Yeah, Paul, where can people find you?
As always, Alejandro, they can find me at Twitter at Dork of Art. I just posted some new art the other day. At YouTube at Dork of Art as well. Posted a small, I think, 13-second silly video on there. And at Twitch at Angel Sword 21. Alejandro, where can they find you?
They can find me at twitch.tv slash the Giant. They can find me on Twitter at a underscore Segovia. They can find me in Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93. And they can find me at thecriticalcorner.com where I write review stuff there.
What was
So,
that last thing that you did, Alejandro?
Loki,
Yeah, series
yes.
or season review, I
See the
guess.
season review of Loki. So, and then the next thing I might review will be Skyward Sword when I finally finish it. Let's see if I pick it back. I have to decide if I want to just keep on going with Twilight Princess because I'm enjoying it so much, or if I'm going to
Oh,
just jump in and hustle with Skyward
maybe
because
you can even do a retrospective.
maybe, yeah. Or I'm gonna put that hot take in the hot take with Twilight Princess. So
Hmm.
maybe. So and hopefully you finish it too. Maybe we can do like a review discussion of the whole Skyward Sword thing.
It might take me a minute, but I plan on getting through it.
Yeah. The good thing there's nothing else right now coming out until like mid August. So,
Correct.
all right, Paul, it's been a pleasure. So remember, until
Pre-
next time,
Press X to play.
to play. See you guys later.
Adios.